Okay, so here's the answer to that monitoring progress question. You should have gotten 8y times y minus 3. Okay, so now let's look at example number 4. So now we're going to solve equations by factoring. So in these equations, we need to factor first. So when we're doing these, we have a few steps. So our first step is we want to get it set equal to 0, and this is putting it in standard form. Okay, remember, we always have to be in standard form before we factor. Then we're going to check for our GCF, see if there is one that we need to pull out. Our next step is to factor completely. And then our last step is to set each factor equal to 0 so that we can solve and see where we're going to have our roots. So let's look at part A. For A, we have 2x squared plus 8x equals 0. So step 1 set equal to 0. We're already there. So now we need to check for a GCF. Do we have a GCF? Well, yeah, we have a 2 and an x in common, right? They both can be multiplied, a 2 inside and an x into them. So if we're pulling out 2x, remember that means we're dividing by 2x. So our 2's cancel out. X squared divided by x is going to be x. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and our x's cancel out. So we're left with 2x times x plus 4 equals 0. So now we're going to set each of our factors equal to 0, because we've factored it completely by pulling out our GCF. So 2x equals 0, and x plus 4 equals 0. So we need to solve. To get rid of the 2, we're going to divide it, right? Division is the opposite of multiplication. So x equals 0. For x plus 4, we need to subtract the 4. We'll get x equals negative 4. So x equals 0 or x equals negative 4. Okay, let's look at example B. For B, we have 6n squared equals negative 15n minus 9. So our first step, we want to set it equal to 0, get it in standard form. So that means we need to get everything on the same side. So first let's move our 15n over. So we have 6n squared plus 15n equals negative 9. And we need to move our 9 over, so we're going to add 9 to both sides. So we get 6n squared plus 15n plus 9 equals 0. Right, because we moved everything over, so now it equals 0. So now we need to check for a GCF. Do we have a GCF between 6n squared, 15n, and 9? Yeah, we can pull a 3 out of everything. So if we pull a 3 out, we'll be left with 2n squared plus 5n plus 3. Okay, so now we've got our standard form, so we need to finish factoring. So we're going to factor that inside part. So we have a equals 2, b is 5, c is 3. So when we do a times c, 2 times 3 is 6. We need two factors that multiply to 6, but they need to add to our b, which is 5. So to get 6, we either do 2 times 3 or 1 times 6. 2 plus 3 is 5, so we know that that's the pair we're looking for. So when we make our box, remember, first term in the first box, 2n squared. Last term in the last box, 3. Then we're going to split up 5n to be 2n and 3n. Okay, so if we look for our greatest common factor between 2n squared and 2n, well, they both have a 2 and an n in common, right? You can multiply that into both of them. And if that side's 2n, this side is going to need to be n so that we get 2n squared. If that side's n, what's this side going to be? Well, that would be 3, right? 3 times n is 3n. If that side's 3, what do we need to multiply by to get 3? 1. Double check, 1 times 2n, is that 2n? Yeah. So our answer in factored form, we have n plus 1 times 2n plus 3. And then don't forget our GCF, so that whole thing times 3 equals 0. So now we need to set each term equal to 0. So we have 3 equals 0, n plus 1 equals 0, and 2n plus 3 equals 0. Okay, will 3 ever equal 0? No. So we can just ignore that one. We have n plus 1 equals 0, so to get n by itself, we'll subtract 1. Then 2n plus 3, we're going to subtract 3. So we get 2n equals negative 3. Then we need to divide by 2 so that our n is by itself. So n equals negative 3 halves. So either n equals negative 1 or negative 3 halves. Okay, now I want you guys to try these monitoring progress questions, and then in the next video, I will give you the answers.